first one up on my screen. I want to do Mike Huckabee. Let's listen to Mike Huckabee as he discusses his. He's so desperate to oppose gay marriage that he's gone to this point.
Process of our constitutional form of government is followed, then you have to respect that that's what it is. And so if there's same-sex marriage in a state that has voted on it either directly by the people's vote or by the elected representatives, I would disagree with it as being a valid definition of marriage. But there's sometimes that you accept the law even if you don't agree with it. But what you don't accept is bypassing the process. And Michael, this is where I think a lot of elites, because I've been just drilled by TV hosts over the past week.
I can
imagine. How dare you say that, it's not the law of the land, because that's their phrase. It's the law of the land. Michael, Dred Scott decision of 1857 still remains to this day the law of the land, which says that black people aren't fully human. Does anybody still follow the Dred Scott Supreme Court decision?
Well, the Dred Scott decision was overturned by the 13th Amendment. And if you go look at the Lincoln-Douglas debates in 1858, right after the Dred Scott decision was adjudicated, Governor, and seriously, it's right there. Lincoln says we must respect this decision as the will of the court, but I think it was wrongly decided, and now we must overcome it. And in other words, to recognize that Obergefell is the law of the land right now doesn't mean that you accept it permanently. But I'm just curious, would you try to undo it with constitutional amendment as we did with the 13th Amendment and the Dred Scott decision?
I don't think that's necessary, because in the case of this decision, it goes back to what Jefferson said, that if a decision is rendered that is not borne out by the will of the people, either through their elected representatives and gone through the process, if you just say it's the law of the land because the court decided, then Jefferson said you now have surrendered to judicial tyranny.
All right, that's enough, because, I only have a small tolerance for lies and propaganda to be played on my air unchallenged. Okay, so this is exactly what I was saying yesterday. He has this framework in his mind that a judicial decision does not have the effect of law. The irony of this is that whenever the court has ruled in their favor, for instance, the 5-4 decision in the Hobby Lobby case, dealing with religious freedoms of corporations and whether or not they had to provide contraception, and you remember that entire debate. It was a 5-4 decision in favor of conservative, religious, evangelical Christians and their ideology. That decision carried the weight of law, and now they promoted it, they heralded it, they championed it, and were elated and regarded the court as being stewards of justice. All of that jargon. But now there's a 5-4 decision in the opposite direction of what they would like, that goes against their beliefs. And all of a sudden now it's, their decision doesn't carry the weight of law. Well, you're not going to have it both ways. First of all, regardless of what Mike Huckabee thinks, does he really believe that he is going to, with his opinion, with his misinformation, and with his bigotry, change hundreds of years of precedent where the Supreme Court decisions has and carries the weight of law? That's the first thing. He's a delusion of grandeur right there. He really believes that his voice is big enough to change American history. That's some level of conceit. But that's besides the point. The second point is that he does not understand the nature of the decision in the first place. They did not create a new law. They're simply saying that all of the existing laws and amendments not only cover straight marriages, but it also extends rights to gay marriages. In other words, there was no law that needs to be written. There was no law that needs to come behind this and support the Supreme Court decision. The Supreme Court decision essentially said that gay marriage is already covered. It is always already a right protected by the Constitution. Therefore, the Constitution supersedes every other state law, and that the states do not have the right to deny licenses, marriage licenses to same-sex couples. So it's not that the court is creating something new, Governor Huckabee. It's simply that it is clarifying that the Constitution and all of the previous statutes cover gay marriage. I wonder if he even cares about that distinction. Something tells me that he doesn't. Something tells me that he wants to obfuscate the situation so much that he can continue to garner support of those crazy evangelical bigots who cannot fathom allowing governmental rights to be issued to people who want to spend the rest of their life with the same sex. And there's a very large contingency of that. I was reading an article, and they use the term article very loosely, by some TCMD Gazette, an online propaganda machine, conservative propaganda machine. And they have managed to make a article go viral. I mean, I think it's had over 150,000 shares just on Facebook alone, which that represents about that probably represents about 500,000 clicks and views. They've taken a case from, and not even a case, a story from 2012 about a Judge Parker who refused to perform straight weddings because she wanted to use that as her type of teaching moment where she can explain to people in Texas who wanted to get married that you are receiving a right that is not afforded to other citizens. And they took this article from 2012, and because of the level of bigotry and animus and just ignorance that surrounds the gay marriage issue, they made this issue alive again, and they titled it Judge Refuses to Perform Straight Weddings, but there's no media outrage and no jail time. Well, first of all, this story is 3 years old, so there would be no media outrage and no jail time. Second of all, there is a difference between performing and officiating a wedding ceremony and issuing a marriage license. But the level of stupid is so strong with conservatism, and particularly with evangelical Christians, that they are not able to simply click through the links on the page and see that this is a story from 3 years ago that they're using to make you angry today. That's number one. Then two, you don't understand. You're so angry that you can't understand the difference between a state issuing a license and a judge volunteering or agreeing to perform a ceremony. And number three, you can't understand that your same argument against this judge who refused to perform same-sex wedding ceremonies, or should I say straight wedding ceremonies. It's hard to get all of those, get it all out at one time. But you refuse to understand. You're so angry that you don't realize that by attacking this judge who has the prerogative of performing no weddings, all weddings, some weddings, weddings just for her friends, because it's a volunteer. She can voluntarily opt in to do it. She's not compelled to do it. It's not that she's refusing licenses. She's just not going to be the officiant. And by their anger, by them being so angry, they don't realize that by attacking her, they're attacking all of the ministers who have the same prerogative. They have the prerogative to perform a wedding ceremony with whoever they choose. They can do a straight wedding only. They could do gay weddings only. They can do weddings for people who are members of their churches. It's their prerogative. But when you're dealing with people who are so consumed by their anger and so consumed by bigotry and ignorance, they are not able to see clearly because they don't want to see clearly. And that is the exact paradigm that Mike Huckabee both lives in and is playing to. He lives in this world of confusion where he honestly believes that the Supreme Court decision, when he doesn't agree with it, does not carry the weight of law, but when he does agree with it, it carries the weight of law. And then at the same time, he's feeding and fueling that propaganda and those lies to all of the people who can't distinguish the difference. And that is how you keep the culture wars going, when this should have been over on June 26th of 2015, when the Supreme Court made their decision. But you have charlatans who understand that you have people who are so afraid of the changes that we see in America, so afraid of all of the cultural differences that they never grew up in this type of environment, right? So they're so terrified that America is going to hell and that the Antichrist is coming, and they've been so fueled with fear all of their lives that it's so easy for charlatan snake oil salesmen like Josh Feuerstein and Mike Huckabee to come in and take advantage of them, one for their vote, the other one for their money and speaking engagements. And so this is how you have people like this who can perpetuate on a national level. I don't think perpetuate is the word that I want. What I'm trying to say is that they are continuing, they are causing this culture war to continue, when in actuality, if you explained to people what has occurred, what the decision actually meant, and what it happened, what the ramifications it has on their life, which really is none, if you explain that to them, then you don't have any reason. They don't have any reason to be upset. But without being able to make them upset, they can't get them out to vote. And they can't get them to share and like their videos. And they can't get them to have this full persecution complex. Not a full, it's a true persecution complex, but a full persecution mentality. And without that ability, conservatism absolutely falls apart, and they have nothing to hang on to. Without propaganda, they cannot fuel the anger. Without anger, they cannot fuel the action. And without action, conservatism is dead. All right, folks, I'm going to take a break. When I come back, I want to talk about Bobby Jindal, the school nerd taking on the school bully. That's exactly what I'm going to title it. I'll probably get in trouble for it, but what the hell. This is the Benjamin Dixon Show. We will be back after this.